All right, well, let's get started. It's 6:31. I'd like to call the Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee meeting for May 7th, 2019 to order. And I'm going to just start, we always start with community comments. If you are here to talk about either the retiree health insurance or about hockey, we'll do those a little bit later. Otherwise, if you have other community comments, now would be the time to do that. All right, we're good. All right, so we're going to go out of order a little bit. We'll let Ronnie let you go so you can head home.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's probably been maybe 1 or 2 months since I've been here. Probably March was the last time. But thank you, as usual, for having me. I really like coming here and talking to you all about what the council is doing and what's going on at the high school. So earlier in March, we were finally able to deliver the Spirit Week check to a representative from Gilly's house, which is really great. We like to do that. A couple representatives from the student council did that this year, and I know they got people there for like photographs and someone to write a little blurb, which was nice. We also planned and had our April Antics Assembly. Again, it's been a while, so just giving you the whole update. And we heard from the state champs, the basketball team, and it was kind of a good way to kind of enter spring, a lot of stress relief. Lots of senior events have been happening, but especially on the council, we're excited to plan the Teacher Appreciation Assembly, where we're going to have people speaking and kind of honoring our retiring teachers and also our new teachers, which is always a nice ceremony. Student council prepares also like a breakfast for the faculty, so we're working on that as well. As you guys, most of you probably know, this is kind of exam season, AP exams. I have one tomorrow afternoon, which I'm getting ready for. I had one yesterday as well, and I have one again next week. But I think by the end of next week, all of them are going to be done. A few unfortunate exams are happening like the day of prom, but you know, there's nothing that can get around.
Latin afternoon.
It's the worst.
I've heard. But other than that, kind of on a happier note, everyone's really excited, at least in my class, for graduation, boat cruise, lots of exciting things coming up, last day of classes, and I know I'm just really excited to kind of appreciate my time here at DS. I'm really grateful to have spent the last 4 years here, and I actually moved here for 3rd grade, so I've spent kind of a good chunk of time in the Dover-Sherborn community, and I'm really grateful for my time here, also for my time kind of speaking to you all. It's been really nice. Also, a lot of people committed. May 1st was like college decision day. I thought I'd just represent, wear my George Washington sweatshirt. Thank you.
She's a parent there.
Really?
Talk to me. Oh, you have to leave.
I can stick around.
My son is a senior there and had a marvelous 4 years.
Good. That's what I like to hear.
Do you know what you want to study?
I'm not like in a major
science?
right now, but I'm leaning towards political science.
Yeah, it's the place to be.
Congrats, Mr. Bork.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Mr. Bork, shout out. He really did kind of push me in the direction of kind of political science. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to study, but after taking Gov this year, I don't know, really seemed to like it. But there's just so much happening at the end of the year. There's a lot of stressful events and a lot of events to relieve the stress. I know prom is kind of a little bit of both, and there are things happening at the end of the year like presentations and exams, and I think it's just a really emotional time. I think I'm going to be really sad around graduation time. It's going to be bittersweet, for sure. And we also had our town meeting with Mr. Smith. I don't know if you wanted me to share any of those details, but I think we had pretty good conversations about each of our bullet points that we went over. If there's anything in particular you wanted me to talk about.
Or like a couple of things, themes that you saw again and again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, some of them are really specific little things like, oh, can we have a color printer or 5 more spots in the library, but those are just little things. I think one of the bigger themes was talking about junior/senior privilege. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about that, but I think one of the kind of remarks from seniors was if there was any possibility to have DRs that you didn't use in the first semester possibly roll over to second semester, because depending on your electives or your gym, sometimes you have an opportunity to use them more in one semester as opposed to the other. Something else was just having juniors being able to sleep in for like a first period DR if they had one, just because I know junior year is stressful, there's a lot going on, and being able to use, just if you have a DR first period, to use that as a junior privilege instead of like leaving school during the day, which is what we can do. Just being able to kind of, a lot of juniors can drive themselves, so if you can just sleep in for that DR in the morning and then come into school later, that was kind of like a question that they had. But other than that, it was just little things here and there, no general overarching themes.
Thanks.
Nice job.
Thanks.
So, and thank you so much, Ronnie. You've been awesome
No
this year. You've done an
problem. I really
amazing
enjoyed it.
job, and I appreciate it. And if you want, we have another meeting in June. So after graduation, come on back.
I mean, I won't be doing anything, so I can probably.
You can park your lawn chair in the audience.
Yeah.
You might not have much to report on.
That's true, but I can check in with Emily and everybody
There
else.
you go.
Yeah, I can let you guys know.
Yeah, bring pictures.
I'll prepare a slideshow if you guys want.
But thank you so much, and best of luck to you. I know you're going to knock it out of the park at GW.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Have a good time.
Good luck.
Thank you. I will.
It's a
I hope
great
so.
time.
Thank you. Yay. All right, and we'll use
Oh,
this.
thank you.
Now I think we're going to go to the proposal for JV hockey. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I'll kick it off
presenting
and
and
then
then
I'll turn it over to Coach Bork. So as many of you know, and thank you, last year we brought forward the proposal for a co-op program with Weston High School and Dover-Sherborn, boys ice hockey, based upon enrollment numbers in each of those sports. Conversations were held between the two respective athletic directors and coaches, and subsequently formed a team. The numbers that we initially had believed were coming out did grow. That presented certainly some challenges for Coach Bork. I have to give him kudos for really working with that to try to find ways to integrate the kids in any way he could. He's an educator, and he knows that that's first and foremost the most important thing, while also maintaining a competitive varsity program. So what we are asking tonight and looking at tonight is obviously your continued support for the continuation of the proposal for the co-op between Weston and Dover-Sherborn, but also another additional piece which we did receive initial support from the athletic advisory, and that is to form a co-op junior varsity program. The rationale for that is we have a number of younger players who represent both schools who this past year had sporadic playing time because of overall numbers and their own abilities. So some of it was a safety issue as well. 14-year-olds, 18-year-olds on the ice can be a very, very different scenario. And we're looking at doing this with the hopes that we continue to develop those student athletes from both respective schools, with the eventual goal of being able to have Dover-Sherborn and Weston High School stand on their own with their own hockey programs. At the athletic advisory, we had one of the Coach Bork's assistant coaches who is from Weston there to help answer some questions. And tonight we have Coach Bork. And if you want to add some more pieces that kind of justifies it, because you were there on the ground with the kids day in and day out.
Yeah, I certainly can. One of the big challenges we had was trying to balance the talent level and the younger players with some of the other players. In a normal school setup, we would probably have a junior varsity program with these younger players, particularly the freshmen, who were really undersized this year in particular. They would have an opportunity to play against kids their own age in other similar junior varsity type programs. That wasn't the case for us this year. We didn't have a junior varsity program, so we rostered every player. So there were a few players that who were freshmen that never had an opportunity to play in a game. Even in our probably, no game is easy, but in a competitive game, there was some, even at that level, there were kids on the other teams that were, far and away much bigger, much larger, faster, and we certainly wouldn't want anybody being put into a position where they would get hurt. And so the proposal is, obviously there's nothing in the budget for a JV program for this year, but we're going to ask boosters to try to fund some ice for games that we can do. These kids would continue to practice occasionally with varsity, probably 2 times a week if we can get them in there. And then also if we can get boosters to fund 1 sheet of ice for practice just on their own, and then maybe a game or 2, at least 1 game every weekend. That's what we're hoping for. But again, this is all contingent on whether or not the hockey boosters from DS and the hockey boosters from Weston can come to an agreement and try to fund this. If it doesn't happen, then we'll just run the team the way we ran it last year, and I would encourage those players who are unlikely to play varsity level hockey to continue to play for their town teams or their club teams or whatever else, just to get game playing experience. The numbers right now returning Weston skaters is 10, and returning DS skaters is 11, and the goaltenders are 2, and they're both from DS. There's no Weston goalie for next year. And those are the players that were on our roster this year that are coming, that we expect to come back. We also know that there's 4 players from Weston who intend on trying out, and that I've been told there are maybe 6 players from Dover-Sherborn that are planning on trying out. So that would give us enough players to have probably 12 or 15 guys on a roster, including some players that didn't get an opportunity to play last year, and have them play on this JV team if we can get it going.
I have a question, Tom. So
Sure.
will they be playing in a JV league?
Yeah.
They won't be a MIA JV, Tri-Valley JV.
No.
Is that right? It'll be like it was when we had.
Yeah,
The
it'll probably,
JV
they
team
might play in a
previously.
Foxborough League
Right.
on Sunday nights or Sunday afternoons.
Yep.
The Valley League also has full season midget hockey, so we'll be exploring options based on what kind of financial support we can get, and then it will be up to us to try to craft it based on what type of support.
To try and get them playing in another league.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. First, thank you so much for coming and answering questions. I appreciate that. This is hypothetical, but if we didn't have the co-op and we had 11 returning skaters and potentially 6 more, so 17, that would be enough for a varsity, or they're saying you wouldn't do it because there'd be too many skaters who would not be up to the level of playing varsity?
Exactly what you just said. So what would happen is, out of those 11 returning DS players, only 8 of them, maybe 7 of them, actually saw regular playing time last year.
Okay.
To some extent, maybe even less. And the 6 players that would be coming up from the middle school, again, we have no idea what their skill level or their talent level is, but if they were to come in, this is where, to me as a coach, it gets into a safety issue, because if you're running a varsity program and you really can't put certain players on the ice because you're worried about them getting hurt, then the burden you're basically playing the same like 8 or 9 players for an entire game, which isn't healthy either.
Yep.
And that's the situation that we would find ourselves in, at least for this year. The good news is help is on the way. There's 20-something kids signed up in the 7th grade for middle school hockey last year. How many of those will actually come to the high school, we don't know. But somewhere down the road, this is going to end. And this is where we find ourselves here today.
Yes, so can we just follow up, because that was my next question, was that then what's your proposed time frame or theoretical time frame? Do the co-op for another year or 2, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it would be 3. Probably 2 more years.
2 more.
Because again, I don't think the 20-something freshmen that would be coming in following this year would be ready to play varsity hockey. Maybe the following year after that, I think both schools, and Weston has a similar situation. They have large numbers in their 7th grade group as well. So I think both schools are kind of looking at this and saying that the co-op is probably going to last about 2 more years.
Okay, thanks. Judy?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So I know we talked about this last year, I think, but what were the numbers like last year versus this year? That is, did it work? Have we increased the numbers for next year? Do you see what I'm?
If
You have
all
any idea?
the kids come out, it would be about the same.
About the same.
Yeah.
Okay, so we haven't lost anybody. That's good. And we're
No,
not
we've
decreasing.
lost some players.
Right, but we're not decreasing our overall numbers.
No, there have been a few players that have indicated that they won't be trying out next year, or that they won't be playing
Right.
the co-op because
Right.
they're going to explore different options or other options. But
But you have about the same number of kids.
it should be right around 30
Okay.
with both schools combined and all the freshmen. But again, the certain members of that freshman group would be much better served
Yeah, I get it.
in a junior varsity type situation.
I hear you.
So this is revenue neutral to us because we're getting the funding from the boosters, that's correct?
That's
For next year,
what's proposed.
Right,
this is
and then
proposed,
we have
yes.
to make another decision, either the boosters can continue to fund, or we have to absorb, or we have to say no to junior varsity hockey the year after that, right? Is there any issue with insurance with regard to if they're playing out of an MIA league, or any other worries that we should have? If the boosters are paying for this and it's an outside of school sports, or do you not?
I think if it's a school supported, so you voted to approve the team.
So when in the wagon days, years ago, when we had, what was the JV, it was a team, it wasn't actually part of the varsity team.
Right.
And it was organized, and the money for the coach was donated, actually in that instance, by the parents to the school, not unlike we do for other sports, so that put that coach on the payroll and the insurance, et cetera. But you'll be using, if I heard you correctly, a current assistant coach.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? So who's already on the payroll?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So they would be under our umbrella policy.
Okay. Are there any other questions? All right, then do I hear a motion to approve the varsity? No, we have to do both.
Okay.
So we're going to do two. The varsity hockey co-op with Weston.
So moved.
Second.
So for the
For 2019-20
school
season.
year.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so discussion. No, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Weston, for
All right, so now the second do I hear a motion for a JV co-op team with Weston High School ice hockey for the 2019-2020 year, contingent upon securing private funding?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
So in the past, we've never voted that team, so why are we voting that team now?
Well, we're using the assistant coach, that's our coach.
I think we're voting it now because we need the vote to go forward with the co-op.
Yeah.
And just if I might, former athletic director Jeff Parcells had mentioned that regarding sort of like the bylaws with MIA hockey and JV teams, that he had indicated that something like this would be necessary.
But if we're not a MIA team, we don't have a true MIA co-op.
Well, is there a harm to us voting to approve it?
No, there's not. I'm
if
just asking
anything.
a question. If it's someone, or suggesting that someone needs to investigate whether this is really a MIAA TVL co-op team and you need our vote,
Right,
or
it would
it's
not
a
be.
separate.
It's my understanding, it would
Right.
not be, but I
Separate.
think,
And the only issue we're voting is to allow the varsity coach to spend time with the JV players.
Would we not have the JV players, pay an athletic fee and participate
they
that
have in
way,
the
so they
past.
have all that
Mhm.
labor?
They
So
have in
that
the
might be
past.
why you wanna
Yeah.
establish the team so that we can,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also, to sort of piggyback on Maggie's point, we want to make sure that it's covered by, that it's a school-sanctioned sport, it's covered by our insurance and all of that. So, I mean, we may not have to, but since we don't know all that, it's probably better to.
been involved in any of the discussions, but I'm not.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
seeing
I
it-
agree with Claire that would not be an MIAA piece. However, because they're paying a user fee and they would be under the umbrella of Dover-Sherborn with one of our coaches who's on the payroll, I think we wanted the permission and the approval from the regional school committee so that we can continue, with other steps with Weston, because Weston has asked us to ensure from our end that we took care of everything we needed to, and I think subsequently they'll do the same.
So this
can
is
I
not
ask-
going through the MIA, the District C committee?
No, it wouldn't, because it's not junior varsity isn't an MIAA sanctioned team that we would be playing, or a league per se.
So, Anne, can I just ask that John's reasoning be noted in the minutes so that when you guys go through this next year and the year after?
That
No,
actually,
that-
yes, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I recall when they added a second JV soccer team, which also was not playing. I think they also were not MIAA. I recall discussing it. I can't remember if there was a vote, but I remember discussing it.
It's fine.
So-
I don't mind the vote. I just,
No, I'm just,
Clarifying what.
yeah, no,
what the
thank you.
status of the team is.
If,
No.
if I could just add one more thing, just a point of clarification regarding the Weston players. So I think Dawn is aware that they have to pay a fee in order to play varsity hockey, $1,500 fee to play for 4DS. So how would we handle a situation where there was a player from Weston High School who is not on the varsity team that's going to be playing on this team? So they're just not on the team, and they're on this separate team?
Then I think Weston needs to figure out how they want to address probably those students from their end.
Right.
Okay.
So that's what happened.
But it's not that, the JV level players will not be charged a user fee by DS?
Not by us.
Okay. Because I can see a little bit I see one problem arising if there's a player that we think that might be the sort of a bottom of the end roster player for the varsity team, who is someone who could practice with us and develop with the varsity team, but probably won't play in games, and then would play in those JV games. I think we'd have to kind of hammer out some language to
You mean at
determine.
the bottom of the varsity, but would play in the JV games?
Yeah.
Or if you want to pull somebody
So
up.
that's in your,
Right.
I mean, this
that's
was
in your
just,
co-op
when
agreement.
we had our AAC meeting, that was the one point we said, is that you guys need to go back with Dawn and sit down and figure out, so that there's no hard feelings at the end of the season, no people feeling like they were double charged for things, so that it didn't come back to bite us.
But I
on
see
how
it
was-
more on Weston, because Weston needs to decide how, because I think there's some cleanup that we can do there with Weston for next year.
Right,
But
Weston's-
they need to decide what they want to do, I think, with their students. If their boosters their boosters participating too, or just our boosters?
Their boosters participate as well.
Right, so I think but we can look at that.
Now, I would just, before the season starts and before tryouts start, come up with your policy with regard to if you have these
Just very
custody
clear.
players,
Yeah.
if they're not playing the athletic fee, they really can't participate with the varsity team, right?
Right.
They really can't play in the games or, really, so
I think it's
you,
a tough
so
situation
you've
if
gotta,
it's a player who's on the cusp and
correct,
they're playing,
Tom,
and they're Weston, and they're
Yep.
paying that full $1,500, and then we're gonna ask them to also
Oh, the
pay
1,500 for them.
for some sort of
Right.
JV fee that's
Right.
privately funded. Now
Right,
they're
so you
getting
guys
whacked
have to
twice,
sort
and they're
that
not
out.
Then they're not playing at the
And
varsity
that's,
level.
yes, that's
Right.
something for Weston to sort out. That's
Yeah.
really not our issue. But in the past, Tom, those people who were on the cusp, those players, were on the varsity team, and then they were just sent to play in the Sunday night games.
Yeah.
So they practiced with varsity, and then
They pay their athletic fee, they were
They
on
pay-
the
They're
team.
on, they're considered on the varsity roster, yeah.
Makes sense.
But the inequity happens when
it's just
the parents
Weston's-
from the other side are like, wait a minute, why are the DS kids paying $300 athletic fee and we have to pay $1,500 and then also this? And so that was a point of contention last year, where there was a little bit of rift over the money situation, and boosters expressed that to us. I mean, that's what it
Yeah,
is.
I mean-
Yeah.
And I told them, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
There are other
You don't have to
TBL
play.
towns, as we know, that
That's
charge a great deal for girls to play
So,
in other districts outside of ours, so
okay.
it's common.
Okay, so
We were in
Amy,
the middle
note
of
that,
discussion,
note
right?
Claire's,
Yeah,
or
sorry.
John's
Okay, my
comments.
discussion's over.
Please. It's all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Burke,
Thanks a lot,
appreciate it.
Tom.
All right, we will now go back to the headmaster reports. Let's start with John.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
So just a couple of things that I just wanted to point out. I included in the report that we held our first Distinguished Hall of Service Assembly, which was really a tremendous event. We honored 2 former Dover-Sherborn faculty members and 2 former graduates. I think that was fantastic for our kids to see what these people have gone on to do, and it was very interesting. In addition to their message for the whole assembly, they also then had smaller breakout groups and individual classes, similar to what we've done with Arts Homecoming. And so it was really well received, and I think that the people who received the honor were really overwhelmed with how well the kids responded to them. And the kids did a great job. Like anything else, you learn, how we can tweak certain things for the next time, but it was really well received. I wanted to update the Regional School Committee to let you know we currently have 61 seniors out on senior project, doing a wide range of things from working in schools, law firms, body shops, veterinarians. We actually have a couple students who are building a boat facility for the sailing program. They're doing some storage, similar to what we had a student build a shed for some of the storage things a couple of years ago. So they've been working with us on that, and that has been fantastic. Those students will complete their senior project on the 23rd of this month, and as many of you know, they present their overall findings on the 23rd that afternoon. By all means, all of you are welcome to attend. It'll start at 2:30. We will put out a schedule for people, so if there's a particular senior that you would like to see, or just to kind of go in and out, it's up in the math wing, 2nd floor as normal, and then that same night we're having our underclassmen awards, and we'll certainly make all of that work. This coming weekend, the Community Service Club is sponsoring another Relay for Life. It will be from 6 to 10 on the Norris Searle turf. Ms. Waterman is the community service advisor, and she briefed the faculty on it today, and it's really a great event. It's a great way for them to get involved. That same group also participated in the Walk for Hunger this past weekend, and Ms. Waterman in community service, as well as NHS, do a lot of tremendous outreach and community service events for our community and for beyond that. And finally, I just want to give a shout out to Amanda Borden. Some of you may have seen, she became the first female pole vaulter. It was awesome to see that program established. Coach Bennett, Coach Mann have done a tremendous job. I had a chance to go see some of the meet today. We have so many kids participating at such a high level, and I think Amanda was tickled to be able to participate in that twilight meet. She's been training hard and working really diligently, and we look forward to that program just continuing to grow. It's a real source of pride because there's kids who are engaged and it fits their needs in so many different ways. If you want to be one of the top competitive runners you can, if you want to be somebody who wants to improve your time, if you want to try a new event, if you just want to have an opportunity to socialize with friends, there's something for everybody in that program. And that's why we really appreciate that. And it gives kids a really positive outlook. They just finished their meet tonight, and they were thrilled, and it's just great camaraderie. So it really is a great thing to see. So that's it.
Do people have questions? Okay, I do. It's been a while since you've been here. So I was just wondering, could you share with us any of the highlights of work that you've done or that's in progress towards the strategic plan, especially in the area of the first initiative, which is the health and well-being of students?
Yeah, so tonight you'll see one of our handbook change proposals is to look at, in line with the strategic plan, but also challenge success, which has been going on for quite some time. Looking at our DR program in the beginning of the morning. We'll talk about that. We have also been looking at other opportunities. We brought the therapy dogs in several times this year. We'll continue to do so. And what we're looking to try to do is partner with golden opportunities to see if we can't have a more regular presence of the therapy dogs. And I'm really pleased to say that we've got a number of kids who are doing their senior project with that, including a student who has had some real academic difficulties and some disabilities, and that student is participating with golden opportunities in his senior project, which is fantastic.
That's great.
So there's been that. We have continued looking at our homework, and as we look at the school start time process, we're going to be reconvening another committee to look at homework, where homework fits in, the value of homework, limits of homework, and we're also looking at lightening up the load for some of our kids in terms of fulfilling some of their electives. I've had a number of kids this year who they're going to double up in science. So for example, I've given them the opportunity to take a course in the summer, or in some cases, if they haven't been able to do it, I've been able to waive an elective for them so they can still keep that science program that they might want to do.
Can I add a couple of things, John, if you don't mind, Ann?
No, please.
Because I think it's really important. Your serving on the School Start Times Task Force has really been invaluable. That was a long and challenging process, and John never complained. I'm still trying to figure out his magic.
He's seen worse.
But you're humble, but you were a great contributor to that. And I think that, and in addition to that, you have been partnering with me as we come out of that meeting last week and talk about what does this mean. In fact, even discussing it with your faculty today, so not wasting a lot of time. So I appreciate that very much. And the other thing that I find just impressive is your involvement in the Innovation Committee work. And you have to get on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, you miss these things. But people are posting things from Beth's innovation work. And I saw a great picture of John down on the floor, scribbling away on something. Yes, coloring.
That's right.
I saw that too.
I stayed within the lines for the most part.
Getting in touch with his inner youth.
That's right.
Yeah, but heading off to Finland this summer.
Yeah, very excited and honored for that.
And meeting with a parent from Finland. There's just been so many things that we never really have the time to talk about, unfortunately, and it's really important stuff. So
Thank you.
I want to give you credit for that. We also have talked about advisories and is there any advantage in what we'll be doing with the schedules? Will there be any opportunities? That just needs to be fleshed out more. John wants to do it right with his people.
And it'll be one of our school improvement goals for next year. So we've talked it through with the school council, and we do want to pilot a advisory program. And in the meantime, we also want to be looking at what will our schedule look like moving ahead in a year from now, because it may look quite different than our current setup.
And rightfully so. I think John is also not highlighting, but I know that the anxiety is there. It's a lot in addition to running your high school, where I'm asking a lot of him and all of the principals. And I just appreciate you staying with us and keeping your nose to the grindstone, both you guys. I really appreciate it.
Everybody good? Okay. Thank you. And Scott, and I have to say, I appreciate the pictures that you add with your report.
That teachers contribute those. I pulled a few from the Playbook Initiative, which I
appreciate
have somewhat of a continuation of the high school report, because we had over 100 students participated in our 3 one-act plays this spring, and they were directed by 6 high school students under the overseen by Carmel Bergeron, and they were fantastic. So those 6 were involved in that, and then we had Caroline Gallagher, who is a junior, and she continues along with Project 351. She was a representative when she was here, and she's now on the Alumni Council. So she applied for and was accepted to run a workshop with students from the middle school. And we teamed up with the middle school from Jamaica Plain and hosted a workshop right here in this space. And it was very interesting to have those two groups come together. I think it was very eye-opening for both groups. And it was fantastic because it goes to the social emotional goal of acceptance and having difficult conversations and community building. So that group met here in March for over half the day. And then on April 6th, they went and met up with all of the other, there were 15 schools that were participating at Dave & Buster's up in Woburn. The Celtics hosted this, and Mr. Horford was there representing the Celtics and had a chance, you see the picture, to sit with our group. And then the following evening at the last regular season game, Caroline Gallagher was, and the other Project 351 alumni that hosted these groups were called out onto the court to be recognized. So it was a great opportunity. We also have teachers who are doing good stuff. We're going to be sending 4 teachers to the project-based learning world out in California in June in hopes of getting them some knowledge to bring it back and get some things going here in the middle school. There are plenty of projects and those types of things, but to enhance what we're already doing. And then we have...
Oh my God.
Now we know what her ringtone is.
That's a great ringtone.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry, Scott.
And we have 2 teachers who have applied and look like they're going to be participating in the Fuse Fellowship, which is mostly around personalized learning. And it's a group of educators. There's a large number of folks from Rhode Island and then area schools around here that they'll be working with to bring ideas back to our staff. And then finally, I would be remiss if I did not mention Sandra Samarco, who has taken STEM on, and it's incredible. I listed several things that she's done between DigiGirls and the Olin College workshop. Now she's looking to take a group of about 35 students to Google headquarters in Cambridge. I think it's May 23rd.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a great
That's
opportunity.
great, yeah.
She's really
Yeah, she's a go-getter. She sees an opportunity.
go-getter.
All you have to do is forward it to her, and within a half hour, she's emailed everybody. Hey, I reached out. Can we do this? So, and Nick Rout has been very supportive in that, in all those adventures. And I believe that's it. Besides,
Sorry.
Yep, go right, go for it.
I've just had so many opportunities to see, the fruits of your labor the past few days. Last night at the Dover Town meeting, a group of 8th graders put forth a citizens petition to eliminate the use of plastic bags in Dover, and it passed overwhelmingly. That was truly impressive. 8th graders taking this thing from start to finish. I can't tell you how impressed I was by that. And that kind of gets a lot of attention. But you also had kids working on CAGS projects over at Chickering when I was there today. And I went into a classroom, and there were these 8th graders showing 5th graders how to open the combination lock and practicing in little small groups where it's not embarrassing. It was awesome.
there were a group at Pine Hill.
That's how we maintain our culture of and our core values of like having a caring climate and taking care of each other. I can't give you enough credit for that. And by the way, I was also with I think it's Haley Gladstone, who was doing a senior project, I believe, with your guidance counselor. Joelle. With Joelle. And she was kind of following her because she had a CAGS group. It was very good. It was very good. Nice feel. It's awesome that these kids are doing all this stuff. The number of things, I can't keep up with Twitter. The number of things these kids are doing. You have some coaches putting stuff out there. I'm actually thinking about teaching a session in our professional development day on how to do that, because it's really very simple and it's a great way to broadcast to people the many, many things that are going on. We realize that, speaking of being humble, that we don't necessarily like to broadcast these things, but people should know the amazing things that go on here on a daily basis. It's It's fantastic. So kudos.
All of our CAGS groups were out today. We'll get a list of what they did. They were out of the building.
This was a community service
This
day.
was their
for-
service day outside of the building. So it's fantastic.
Thanks for sharing that, because I love the little things.
Yeah.
And we know the big, like we hear often about the bigger things. I feel like it's the little things that happen day to day, potentially, that have the most impact on the most kids.
You can see it. You
Yeah.
can see how it impacts the
So
kids when
thanks.
you talk with them, or the way they talk with the kids, and how they take pride in the way they carry themselves. It's really good.
The eighth grade teachers, particularly Kathy Malloy and Donna Bedikin, who have put that all together, it kind of, it's been going on so long, sometimes we don't talk about it enough, but it is fantastic what those students do and what they get out of it.
Yeah, because it's been going on for us potentially, or for you for a long time, but for the kids, this is
Right.
their one time that they're doing it for the first time.
The top soccer that some of our high school kids are doing, working with some of our more challenged students in the community, not necessarily our students entirely, but kids from the community who have pretty difficult challenges. Our kids stepping up and helping out with that. High school, I believe.
Yes.
Just that. I'm going to highlight that stuff every chance I get, because I think it really makes a difference. It's just great stuff. I'm really proud of these kids.
Does anybody have any questions? All right, I just have a really quick one. Sorry. Has there been some more communication sort of between the middle school and high school, if they've been doing such a great job with the STEM stuff, so that it can continue, the kids who are learning the skills in the middle school then can continue on?
It was yesterday afternoon. I was
Oh,
talking
so
with Nick Rowe,
you've got some time.
and Nick is very in tune to what they're doing.
Great.
And very excited to come back and send Mr. Smith back to get courses approved and spend money on cool stuff going on at the high school. He's thrilled. He was like beside himself. He's like, I can't believe Sandra's doing all this stuff, and what she's providing for our students that are coming over to us. So absolutely.
He's already met with our academic standards group to preview for next year, early in the year, to ask for an AP computer science program. So he's researching a number of different platforms. And then we also have, I have 5 students who will be doing the virtual high school AP computer science course next fall.
Great, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, I appreciate it. Beth.
Thank
Your
you. So
turn.
I promised I'd be short. Scott already mentioned the Fuse Fellowship, which is a great opportunity for our teachers to become coaches for their peers, both here and in other districts, around personalized learning. We also have 2 teachers participating from the elementary level, so that's exciting that they'll be able to collaborate as well, talking about the continuum of skills. I mentioned under the multi-tiered system of support, which is the new name for RTI. We like to keep our alphabet soup changing time to time. But we have a literacy specialist who's going to be working with our middle school English team on May 14th to come in and talk about how we use our small group English classes and how we can maximize that time to make sure that the kids get the support with the individualized skills that they need, and then how that might trickle into the gen ed classroom for all of our students who take English for those 3 years. And that same consultant is actually going to be working with our English curriculum leaders K through 12 to talk about kind of our vision and core beliefs around learning and literacy, just to make sure that we are teaching reading and writing and grammar and vocabulary the same way, kind of all the way through, so that's exciting. Cultural responsiveness continues. We have a leadership team meeting tomorrow, actually, and our headmasters and principals are going to be bringing samples of the work that teachers have produced over the course of the year, given their educator goals around anti-bias curriculum and expanding perspective. So that'll be nice to share. And we have, as I mentioned, Leslie Smart, who's the Medco director at Pollard Middle School in Needham, coming to work with the leadership team to kind of train us on how to find and identify bias in policy, which moving forward in the years to come, as we start to look at the handbook, we can have our anti-bias lens on, and as we work with you folks to support any policies that you develop, we can also share that piece of advice and information. Other things going on that I didn't mention are much less exciting. MCAS, we have a mid-cycle review for our civil rights policies and programs, evaluations. Very busy getting those done and providing teachers with feedback. And then there's a lot of work going around, kind of wrapping up the year for the curriculum. I've been meeting with the curriculum leaders and kind of the highlights from this year, including the FLEX program moving up to the middle school and the outcome of the math review. We will share with you hopefully at the joint committee meeting in June, so you can kind of see the fruits of that labor throughout the year, and I'm happy to provide other examples in the other disciplines as well.
Thank you. Yes.
I have 2 comments, if that's all right. One comment is that I am hopeful in the work that you're doing with Ms. Smart and thinking about professional development for next year. Will there be another opportunity for teachers who would like to take that IDEA's cultural responsiveness course?
Yes.
Because I understand that a number of teachers, just the schedule didn't work out for them or they had to drop out. And I'm just hopeful that we will continue to offer that at times that work for them, because I think it's important that as many, if not all, our faculty have an opportunity or are encouraged to do that work. And the second thing is that I just wanted to say thank you for finding J.C. Ippolito. I was so overwhelmed with delight to read that in your report this week. I've known him professionally for over a decade, since before he finished his PhD and began his work at Salem State and with the adolescent literacy consulting group that he runs. He is the preeminent expert. I'm a literacy specialist by background. He is the preeminent expert in this region for adolescent literacy, for disciplinary literacy. His work is, and besides that, he's just an excellent teacher and coach, and your teachers will love working with him. So thank you for finding him, because he's top notch.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Along those lines, speaking of ideas, in the ideas course, I happened to be over at the middle school having a conversation with the teachers about the start time recommendation, and came in on the heels of 4 teachers who were talking about their experience in the ideas course. And that's the best way to advertise, when your colleagues are sharing just how it changed their thinking, how much it moved them. It is very impactful, and it is just a fantastic thing. I'm with you 100% that our goal should be that everyone has taken that course, EMI or ideas. I could use the refresher. I took the EMI course, but you need to continually refresh. So thank you for supporting that. Let's keep it going.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. That was succinct. So thanks. Don.
Hopefully I can.
Yeah, I was going to say, your challenge.
You have in your packet your April 30th financial statements, and then as a separate handout, just so I don't confuse you, I had time to do some more projections, so I wanted to give you a second sheet, not in your packet, so you're not confused, but I went ahead and put encumbrances in for things that I know we're going to be doing, just to get you closer to where the numbers may be at year end, so we can look at that later. But on revenues, as we are now only 2 months away from the end, I am starting to let our budget go if we haven't received anything. So you will see, for instance, miscellaneous revenue. I'm going to go ahead and say that we're not going to get any miscellaneous revenue right now, just again to start cleaning up our projections. I did the same thing with the activity fees. You'll notice your high school parking, we actually maxed out, and anything that comes in from now on will go into our building fund as we have set up that arrangement. And we just received today the last set of athletic fees, and so I will be able to true that number up. So that number still is as though we are going to meet budget. I'm thinking we might be slightly over, which will mean this number won't change, and anything over goes into the athletic revolving fund. Other than that, our chapter 70 and 71 is what is driving, and a little bit of interest is what's driving your positive variance. On the expenditures, so I do have some new estimates of variances, starting with salaries. So we were carrying in about $80,000 of salary variance based on post-fiscal year 19 budget staffing changes. I have now updated those projections to reflect, and if you looked back at your March report, I mentioned that there were some unfilled positions that probably were going to increase our variance. So I've now updated our numbers to include that. So I'm adding an additional $60,000 to your positive variance to get you to about $140,000. And those unfilled positions are coming from a position in IT, a custodial position, and as you know, we opted to do a pilot program instead of the QPOs, and so the stipends for QPOs now I have put over to be a positive salary variance since we will not be using those. So that gets you up to what I'm projecting right now of about $140,000 of salary monies that we will not expend this year. On the expenditure side, continuing just to update a few things, as I mentioned, I have been mentioning, our SPED services are running a negative variance based on student needs. Our utilities are also right now looking to be a positive variance, and that variance, just so you know, when you look at your statement, also includes projection of about $25,000 of our net metering. So that is continuing to be healthy, although this month I'm not sure.
All right.
What we will see.
Yeah, not much.
And I'm sort of looking at this as a combination with plants and facilities. So I'm using that variance to offset our negative variance in plants and facilities where we have had a high number of repairs. And I have Mr. Kelly right now working on a report that I can share with school committee in June, just giving you some references around what kind of repairs we had, so I can categorize them in a little bit and just sort of explain, give you a little more background as to how we spent that large sum of money. On healthcare, at this point in time, if you remember when we build the budget, we always put a reserve for placement changes at $50,000. We actually haven't had to tap into that, so I've now updated the numbers to reflect that we won't be using that reserve this year, given where we are in the year. So that brings the positive variance from healthcare insurance up to $280,000. And then obviously we continue to have a planned positive variance in transportation based on the use of the regional transportation fund. So the second statement you have is just, again, you'll see if you look at what's left in the operating budget, it's about $130,000 less, because I went ahead and like I said, we don't have POs in for things, but I went ahead knowing things and put them in there. So that'll still continue to change because I know there's 2 months left and I don't know everything, but it gives you a little closer of an idea of how we stand. So I did note that we would also see how this works in the big picture, right? So we've had a couple of votes this year to utilize E&D. So I just want to refresh everyone's memory. So we ended up last year with our E&D being about 4.5%. So we weren't at the 5%, we were about 4.5%. So during the year, you voted to spend $145,000 on security. And I can say at this juncture in time that we will have exhausted the whole $145,000. So even though I put a contingency in there, things have come up. So we will actually end up transferring the whole $145,000 out of E&D. And if you remember, we're using $300,000 for E&D for capital. So that goes against our, our $1.1 million that we had. But then what would be coming in then is the surplus that you see from operations. And when you add all those numbers together, I am projecting that you've got a little bit more of a surplus than we can accommodate in E&D. And so in trying to be strategic like we did last year, I just wanted to start the discussions on what our options could be in that arena.
Good, because that was going to be my question.
Yeah.
Does
What are our
anybody
options
have
for
any
in that
questions?
arena?
So, do you want to talk through some from your perspective, having?
So as we did last year, the easiest opportunity we have to strategically plan for things like this, this is to, again, maybe take your regional transportation reimbursement from June and put it into the regional transportation fund. That then takes a chunk of the excess away because we would then have negative revenues because we're saying about 200. Well, you can see we're expecting another 261,000 of revenue to be collected. So if you take out that variance, that's going to put you into a negative position and sort of helps what then flows through E&D. With that, I think there's a couple different options as to why it makes sense. It worked out fabulously this year to fund your capital. we will always have capital needs to fund. Starting next year too, you now have an OPEB stabilization fund that it has to roll through the budget. So it'd have to be something that you put in your budget for 21, but that's another way that you can, just like we did with capital, treat it that way, and that could be some additional funds that could go into your OPEB. The other thing we've been thinking about with the decision last week for school start time is it gives us a little bit of seed money if we need to do something that we didn't plan for in the budget to start that process rolling. As you know, we've mentioned that optimally, maybe if we added one more bus here and there, we could shorten the run times. That might give us an opportunity to do that for fiscal year 20 and get those kinks worked out. If you remember, your regional transportation reimbursement works very similar to circuit breaker. You have to put the funds out the first year before it gets baked into your transportation reimbursement. So it wouldn't be, so if we use some of that money to pick up an extra bus next year, that's going to get built into our 21 Chapter 71 reimbursement. So we'll have less impact on your budget when you build fiscal year 21 budget. So you almost have to like prepay, you have to pay the seed money because there's a year lag in reimbursement. So I think there's a lot of things that would be in favor of moving the district strategically to meeting the several needs and making sure we tell the towns we're using the money efficiently, effectively, and serving their needs.
So we've actually reached out to Steve Leahy and Erica Alders to have a conversation, to let them know that we've discussed this tonight. And that's about the size of it at this point. We're obviously not making a decision in that meeting. It's just to bring them up to speed formally.
Right, so we'll have discussion tonight, and then you guys will go off and
Exactly.
do your magic.
Right. And then we'll vote.
So in June, right, you would vote to move that money to the regional transportation fund, the same vote we took last
Or the
year.
capital, or however or did we?
Well, no, you have
It has to go
yeah,
through.
your
Okay,
only
yeah.
way to move money from this year is
into
through the regional transportation fund. That's your option. And then what you do with that, then, like we said last year, we were gonna do that, but we were pegging that money to fund your capital.
And for those who weren't here when we did this last time, Judy and
I was
Becky,
here for it. I still am, but go ahead.
it behooved us to have those upfront conversations with
Oh, yeah.
advisory and warrant about what the intent for the use of that money
Exactly.
is,
Yeah.
and sort of come to an agreement.
And along those lines, at the open hearing in Sherborn, it was actually formally noted how much they appreciated that our capital ask was softened by that.
Right.
I
Can I just put another thing, the good thing
Yeah,
about
go
the
ahead.
capital, not that it matters, but it does matter. It gave us so much freedom. We already received our new mower today, and think about the grass that's growing and the impact that we've been able, and all of our capital projects have already been scheduled. Technically, if we didn't already know that money was pegged, I couldn't have done anything until today, which was following the day after the Dover town meeting. So it was extremely effective for us this particular year based on the projects that we had to have that already taken care of, because once you guys made that vote back in March, we put all of our steps into action and are ready to roll this summer, which helps us tremendously. So that was a great byproduct of that transaction.
And also, just because when we were talking today, you mentioned that it also ends up actually saving money on overtime because we're able to.
With this particular, with the
tractor
being there,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Maggie.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I have two comments. I applaud your thoughtful and forethought in managing our funds. I'm grateful that we're coming out ahead. I know a lot of the things that might have impacted that are not things that we can plan for or not plan for. So I appreciate your attention to all of that. I philosophically support the idea of moving the money through transportation and then potentially using it for capital asks. primarily because looking forward, I know we have some pretty big ticket years coming up. We have roofs, we have all manner of big projects that can't really be broken up into little bits. So I think that being proactive with that is something I would super support. With regard to the bus and adding a bus, I am interested in the idea that we have to do it and prepay it ahead of time, and so that might be an idea we consider. I am very concerned with the idea of improving the bus situation for children who live in Dover and Sherborn and making their commute shorter while we continue to have one bus that serves our Boston resident Dover-Sherborn students. I feel as though, especially that we voted last week and we made it a priority that our high schoolers get to sleep late, asking our Dover-Sherborn students who live in Boston to continue to get up at 4:30 in the morning really sends a disturbing message. I understand that it would probably fall on us as a district to pay for that in one way or another, and so I would ask that we figure out how much that is going to cost so that we can think ahead how we might pay for that. Because I cannot approve shorter bus times for people who live in Sherborn when I know that our students who live in Boston are on the bus for 3 or 4 hours a day. I'm really uncomfortable. So that's
So we had a meeting on that today, actually.
fabulous.
So
All right.
Thank
we
you.
are looking into what our options are.
Terrific.
And hopefully, I mean, something would change not in 21, but we'd hope to change something in 20.
Well, whatever we can do. I know we have partner communities.
Yeah.
Are there ways that we can utilize? I know students in Needham do use the T.
You must have been in our meeting
Yep.
today. So.
Can we, do our Westwood students come in later? Like, I want to see every avenue, and I want it to be transparent, and I want us to put our money where our mouth is, because
Right. And so the
all our
optimal situation we're in right now is, I think we've mentioned before, our old bus contract is up with Medco Inc., which
Yep.
is who helps us manage ours. So we're starting fresh. So we just had a meeting today with Monique, and so when we put our RFP for our services, we're going to put out there, price out 2 buses and see where that lands and what we can work out.
And what do those 2 buses look like?
Yep.
We have a very large bus for approximately 40 kids.
Right.
Is that
Absolutely.
cost effective? Or
Correct.
are there other ways to do this? So,
Right.
and including looking at the opportunities to use the T, which we did do in Wellesley, not for the entire Metco population or
Correct.
Boston students, but for the kids who stayed after. We purchased Charlie cards for the kids, and that worked really well. So we're exploring that. We heard the message loud and clear last week, and we're hopping. We're working hard on these things. I still am a little concerned about being able to do it as quickly as the 3 committees want us to, but we are on it. We are taking it very seriously and not leaving stones unturned.
Appreciate it.
And my only other comment for those who don't follow the budget, that this is, again, very unusual, that the reasons for the surplus is the salary variance. We've had a number of positions unfilled. That $280,000 is because of the change in healthcare, people not taking plans we thought they would take, people coming to the district being hired and not taking healthcare from us because they can get it elsewhere. And I don't think we've ever not used some of the reserve. Like, that is very unusual. That puts us in the situation where we are now.
Some of it was literally luck of the draw.
Yeah.
And people coming on board who didn't take insurance.
Yeah, and that could all change next year. So as I think I mentioned to you, we left certain of our main positions in our projections next year because I think it's just, we have interims, we have changes. I anticipating some of those people coming back on once we get new hires. And then so half of that to Claire's point, half of that savings partly is, as you remember, we did 10% of everyone at benchmark. That's all we knew at the time we did the budget, and so much happened after that. The rates settled down. We had 50% go to high deductible versus benchmark, and that was savings on top of paying out all the cost share and the incentives that we paid for people to move to various plans, and our employer contribution to the health savings account for employees. So that won't happen again because we've worked those, but things like people not taking health insurance, or we've had the positions unfilled, no one's taking that insurance either. And that adds up. I mean, that's a single family can be over $20,000 of cost for us. So you can see how quickly that adds up to be a lot more money than you think. And so it's not as many people as it seems, because it only takes 5 people to generate $100,000 for an advanced plan.
When is your open enrollment done? Like, when will you know your benchmark versus high deductible?
End of May.
Okay, so we really can't even make decisions based on that, because people are free to go back on benchmark or do a more expensive thing, and we have to pay for it.
Exactly. Okay. Right. And there are no incentives this year, so everyone will just do, what feels good for them, and it's not driven by financial things, character.
So we have to expect some people will go back to benchmark.
Yeah, I do expect some people. I've already heard a few. I don't think we're going to see a huge amount, but I do expect people to a little more work than they wanted, and so they may go back to easier plan to administer from their personal standpoint.
Yep.
I should probably know the answer to this, but when we set it up as the Transportation Stabilization Fund, does it make sense to kind of elevate the title of it at some point? Because while we're putting in money that is a lot coming from Chapter 71 funds, we're using it for other things. That doesn't matter?
No, it's a byproduct. So we actually charge transportation to that fund. That's all it can be used for. But what it does is the byproduct is that it frees up money other places in your operating fund that allows you freedom from that. The Regional Transportation Fund, if you put money in there, the only thing you can charge against it is transportation. Okay. But because we budgeted 100% for transportation in your budget, and all of a sudden we're going to take $229,000 and charge it to the Regional Transportation Fund, that's why you have $900,000 to $800,000. You've got to pull out that, and that's our money that then we funded capital with, right? This year. So it sort of flows. It all flows through your excess and deficiency calculation. But that's what you can't use it for. You cannot charge anything other than transportation to that fund.
So does it make sense to set up any other stabilization funds if we might be in a position? I know we have the OPEB stabilization. I'm thinking especially around capital. I'm thinking especially around the turf replacement that's going to happen in another 5-6 years, some number of years. Does it make sense to actually set up a capital stabilization fund that we could be able to take things? Or is that not?
I think there's one stabilization fund that the regional school districts are allowed to do, and it still has a cap on it of what you can do, and I think it becomes a quagmire of putting it in and taking it out. Okay. We looked at that, I think, 2 years ago. I have to go back and look at my notes, but I didn't think at that time there wasn't anything else that we felt was beneficial for the region.
Because it'd be nice to be able to start saving for the bigger items, like a roof or a turf field.
Well, we sort of discussed it. You need to check your notes, because I think we've been
through
you might
that.
Yeah.
I vaguely recall discussing
Right. You're limited as a region too. We're not like the towns who have a lot more. Like last night they had all of that. But yeah, you're a little more limited because you should have a more limited pool of money, given that you're funded by 2 towns. Versus the towns who could have some other bonanzas happening out there and where money's coming directly to them. But we'll definitely I'll go back and look, but I'm pretty sure my first year on here, we looked at some of those other funds and there wasn't anything else that the treasurer recommended that we pursue.
So philosophically, we're sort of expecting that our member towns that's why we're sharing our future capital needs with them. That's why we're sharing our things, because we're sort of philosophically expecting that they understand that these expenses are coming down the road, and maybe they're saving for them or planning for them in other ways.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Okay. Which is right.
Okay.
Right. And so that just.
Thanks, guys.
I mean, one thing we would never do is, put aside the money to spend on something that they weren't 100% on.
True.
In agreement
That makes
with.
sense.
And
Right.
that's where this discussion in between the meeting will be helpful. Like I
Yep.
said, and you don't have to pinpoint exactly what's going to happen, but there should be some agreement as to what could happen, and that you would stay within that framework that you laid out. Exactly.
Thanks.
Yes, I just have a couple of questions, Dawn. So the unfilled positions,
Yes.
are those are removed from the budget from next year, or
No,
we just didn't get a chance
they
to
actually
fill them?
now have been filled, but just late in the year. Like
Okay.
one starting work on Monday, and it's been vacant since November.
Okay, so that's all baked, we won't have those savings, because all
No.
of these are baked into next budget.
Exactly. Those positions are not being eliminated, they just weren't filled for the whole year during this particular year.
Full employment problems, like hard to find people who want to
Yeah.
do these
Yeah.
jobs type
It
of
is.
situations. Yeah.
It is.
So,
It's a tough market out
Yeah.
there, and so we have struggled on a couple of positions.
yes.
And just one other thing, I did give you your quarterly report for your special revenue and revolving funds. And just one fund to point out specifically as you look to raise prices for school lunches in June, some of you, is just where your your fund balance stands for school lunch, which is over the last couple of years, if you've watched it, we now are at a point where we do have anywhere between a $40,000 and a $60,000 net profit from school lunch. And that's a combination of, 3 years ago, you increased the prices by a quarter. Janelle is now doing a lot more scratch cooking, which if you look at so another handout I gave you was participation rates from 14 on to now. And sometimes you would anticipate when you increase your price that your participation may dip initially. But if you look at fiscal year 17, which is when your price increase last time went into effect, participation went up. And that was the first year she started doing more scratch cooking in the kitchen. In fiscal year 18, you'll see that participation's continuing to go up. The addition in that particular year that she attributes that to is having Nora Saul as part of the staff now, and working more with the kids and doing a lot of taste testing. They're really providing some pretty cool meals for the kids, and that's showing in our participation rates. The profits, though, that are generated are really from your a la carte sales. We really sort of break even or lose money on the main meal. But 55% of her sales are a la carte, and that's where the profit margin is. But every 3 years, as I mentioned in my memo, we should look at raising lunch prices a little bit, only because your labor, as you know, is going up annually, and we all know food prices go up. So I think it's just fiscally responsible. We want to be able to provide the service, but we also want to be able to cover our costs. In that vein, because she has been so successful here at the region in sort of building up a fund balance, as you know, one of the capital projects was a new floor. And with that, as we start thinking about moving some of the equipment out and moving it back in, she's going to be putting together a proposal for us to potentially buy some new serving centers, serving carts, to replace the ones that she doesn't even know how old they are, just to really give a fresh look on there. And it gives it more, the new ones today have more versatility in how they can be used. And so I will be bringing that to you in June. Individually, they're a little over 10,000, so that constitutes a capital item that should be approved by the school committee. But we would use the school revolving funds, lunch funds, to pay for that, but hopefully get those in this summer. So with the new floor, when we move the old ones out, we can install the new ones when the floor is complete. So just keep that in mind for June. And then so you have also area of school lunch prices. So all this information is being provided just so you can ponder it prior to the June joint meeting, when all 3 school committees will come back together and approve the quarter price increase on the lunch and the 10% or the 10-cent increase on the milk.
Okay, everyone's good? Thank you. And now, Dawn. we're going to go talk a little bit about the retiree health.
Can I just ask one?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry.
I apologize.
You jumped in and moved on to the next subject before I got my second question out. On the healthcare savings, is any of that baked into the budget that we just?
Yes,
approved?
remember, we took about I think it was $150,000 reduction.
Okay.
That's what really helped balance our budget. We did not see an increase in healthcare costs. We actually saw, I think it was like $150,000 decrease.
Okay.
So we did incorporate the movement to high deductible and some people going for the opt-out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into the fiscal year 20 budget.
Okay, great, thanks. I mean, we love the savings. So, and we know that the regional school, we value all of your time and all of your efforts. You guys work super hard to consider every aspect, you know, the JV hockey and all of that to save. And we know that your team, Andrew, works extremely hard. And I think we said that at our town meeting, but we don't come here and say it, so I'll get on my soapbox. I appreciate. So at the same time, when at $800,000 where it is standing right now, that money's been taxed to all of us as citizens. So, and it will be used, yes. Of course it'll be used, so to service the students, and absolutely, but it's been taxed ahead of time. So just think, I want to say that, I need to say that, so, and I think Steve will say that to you directly. So, and that's always our concern from where we sit for Sherborn and advisory is, it's money we had to tax from citizens, and we're going to be raising our tax rate significantly in Sherborn. So to provide that budget, so if we can avoid doing that at any opportunity, that's where we're coming from. So the 9 of us who sit on that committee, or 8 of us right now, but that's our perspective on things.
So just to put that $800,000 perspective, from that you have to take away the $145 for security, the $300,000 for capital. And so what we're really talking about that is surplus is a little less than $200,000 that we wouldn't have anything to do with if we did not put it into the regional transportation. So it's not as large as that seems. That's why it's trying to just remind everyone of the money that you've already spent that will hit to E&D, that will help replace.
Right, but as you're considering what E&D, you have a margin. You're at 4, 3, 4, 5, and you can go up to 5.
Right.
As you're considering that, I just put that on the table too.
Understood.
It's totally within your discretion. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so
Retiree.
So you want
Okay.
I'll turn it over to my subcommittee.
Subcommittee. So our subcommittee is Maggie, Sharon, and myself. And I'll do a brief recap of where we are historically, and then tell you the actions that have happened to date as we look at retiree healthcare cost share. So Regional School Committee remembers that in November 2017, we voted to establish the OPEB Liability Fund Trust. March of this year, we voted to contribute $500,000 in FY20 to that trust. And our actuaries recommended that we review and adjust the retirees' premiums as a way to manage that OPEB liability. As those around the table recall, the cost share split is currently 70-30. Teachers retiring from both Dover and Sherborn are paying 50-50. So at the region, we engaged with Kevin Feely from Feely and Brown to advise us and assist us on this work. Kevin had also helped us with healthcare negotiations last year and works with the town of Dover, I believe. We pulled together the employee associations, the same ones that we had worked with for healthcare, to discuss the premiums and the retiree percentage split and what our options are. Dawn can talk to it later, but under the law and the way the benefits are managed here at the region. This is a decision of the regional school committee. It is not a negotiated item. We are committed to being more than a 50-50 split, and that was the information brought forward. In order to come closer to 50-50 or achieve 50-50, there was a number of conversations that occurred with these associations to hear their interests and talk to them about what these issues mean for the region, and also what it means for those retirees who, this is money out of their pocket. In the end, we reached a cost share agreement of 50-50 by increasing the retiree percentage 5% over 4 years. And any current retiree who, based on their employment history, and there are a few of them, who will never be eligible for Medicare and must maintain that higher costly healthcare coverage like the rest of us have day to day, those 5 people will remain at the 70-30 cost share. So those were the results of the discussion. I don't know if you want to ask questions. We do have Casey Potter here in our audience who participated with us.
Represent the retirees.
Sorry. And if Casey wants to share anything about that session. Sorry to put you on the spot, Casey.
There is no putting on the spot, no problem. Very difficult conversation to have for obvious reasons. The discrepancy that's existed since, I believe, 1993 when the towns first implemented the 50-50 share, whereas the region, which hadn't had health care coverage for its retirees for a while, I'm not sure exactly what the date was, but that came in later. So the region remained at 90-10 until 2003, 2004, the first time this was addressed. And at that time, the retiree share was increased to reflect what current teaching members would pay, which was 70-30. And so I think at that time, everyone knew, that was, I don't want to call it Pandora's box. Pandora had nothing to do with it. But they knew that eventually it would be likely that 30 would move to 50. Now, Claire, I think, was back when that happened the first time. Were you involved? Yes.
I was here
yes,
at Pine Hill, but yes.
It was, it was a tough process for a lot of reasons. There was no real way to do it well because people, especially retirees, it's a tough subject, and you people know as much as anyone else how that was. However, given the fact that the committee could have simply said we're just going to implement it, the fact that they came to the groups and talked to us, not in a negotiation, but in a way to how can we do this the best? How can we take what is not the best case situation and do the best we can with it? So we agreed to look at several things. One was the graduality, lengthening out the increase. The second had to do with the people that we mentioned, the people who were never going to be on Medicare. There were some other people we had to kind of consider. There are people who are currently retired but are not yet at 65. So their plans are still the high plans, though they will eventually get the Medicare. So that could be 2, 3, 4 years for some people. They retired earlier. That's one of the situations. The other that was particularly hard to look at is also the fact that we have retirees in their 90s, and those people are probably having pensions that are not necessarily as generous as some of the more recent ones. So we did consider those particular aspects. In the end, the graduality, I think we took care of that in a fair way. I think the 5% over 4 years, we appreciate the patience of the school committee. Grandfathering in the people who are on full plans, also very much appreciated. We tried in good faith to find a way to handle unique situations, but the minute we started to do it, we found that in doing it, other problems would pop up, and all of a sudden we would get to the point where we could be making a variety, so let's say, for instance, if we have 4, I think the number is 4 over 90, so we say, okay, those people, 90, yes, well, what about the 89s? And the numbers, once we left that, became very big. So it became, then the fact is that some people would retire perhaps as administrators, perhaps on a higher salary, other people. And so it became, how on earth are we going to do this in a fair way? And I think people wanted to get this done somewhat quickly. If we had taken a 2-year study and fleshed everything out, that would have been possible, but we also recognize the practical limitations that people are operating under. So I think the hardest thing was to take, not being able to address some of those issues, but because we found that we couldn't really get to it in a fair way, the 2 things that we have done, I would say we have agreed to them, but it wasn't really a negotiation. It was mutual problem solving, looking at a very difficult situation. And, I'd like to commend Dawn and Claire in particular, Maggie too, but I worked a lot with those 2. And again, it was a very difficult situation to look at. I appreciate the sensitivity of everyone involved. It's a very, again, the towns have this, we all recognize that. And, to be honest with you, the retirees of Dover and Sherborn who have been going at 50% for 1993 are probably, it's equity too. So, that's the way it is. If you keep it at 50%, that would be very nice. I heard something about maybe increasing that. Let's maybe not approach that, but that's something for
state law says
we can't.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Until the Massachusetts law changes.
Okay,
You're
please
good to
don't
go.
change the Massachusetts law. That's what I'm saying. Thank you. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to ask. I have been in touch with
very
people.
eloquent
Yes.
recap from their end, and I will let you know that, and I think I mentioned this to you before, but we did, so informally, Casey reached out to a lot of retirees, but also we sent a letter to every retiree who takes healthcare coverage through us to let them know this is going to be on tonight's agenda. So we did hear from a few people in the office once that letter was in the mailbox, but everyone just wanted to voice, their opinion, but understand when the current, stage of where we are right now with OPEB and the 2 towns being different, that this is probably what actually needed to take place. I will just also add that, I queried our actuarial consultant as to, so if we take this on, what impact will this have on your $28.9 million? He said a rough estimate of what it's going to do. It's probably going to, once it's in full effect. And remember, when your OPEB is projected out, it's forever, it's all employees now and forever. So it would probably have about a 25% reduction in your current OPEB liability. So that on top of now being able to say you have a fund set up to start funding, and once we get a funding policy, all that plays into what our discount rate will be. So I think we've taken a lot of great steps, if this passes tonight, in trying to manage that liability that's currently out there, which will play into helping our 2 towns know a clearer and have more parity with what they're funding on their end. And just so you know, Dover last night did approve $1.6 million to put into a region OPEB stabilization fund. So as we start asking for money, they've put money aside, and their goal is to fund 60% of whatever our liability, knowing, as Robin said last night, that number is always fluctuating, which they're using 28 million. We have hopes of bringing that number down, so they'll even have more funded than they think when it is all said and done.
Well, I just do want to add to the conversation to say thank you very much, Casey, and to all of the folks who came to represent the different bargaining units. I participated in this. It's our obligation as employee benefit people, and particularly to our colleagues in Sherborn. This is a really, really difficult and unpleasant thing to take on, because these folks have worked really hard for a long time, and they're not well-to-do people by and large. And so to make changes to their health insurance obligation, while it's the right thing to do for the taxpayers and for equity between the 3 districts, is a really challenging thing, and I do hope that our colleagues in Sherborn particularly take note that we did the work that we needed to do to clean this issue up, because I know it's been a concern for former school committee members and other folks in Sherborn that this lack of parity has been hanging out there. So thank you very much for taking this on. This was no fun. And I think it's fair.
It's okay. Well, as I said, I think we did a good job with a messy situation, and there's really the mark of success is doing the best you can with what you got. And I think we did okay.
Do keep an eye on your legislature, because right now it is the law that municipalities who do this work have to provide 50% for their retirees. So it's not flexible. We can't cut that further until folks on Capitol Hill, hopefully they won't go there, Beacon Hill.
And just to remind the committee members too, because we're in West Suburban and we offer a variety of plans as retirees look at this particular increase, our monthly premiums range from like $312 to $392. So there is a selection in there that could meet their needs if the increase becomes something that they need to try to manage financially.
Although it is, most people have the
majority of the people, like 80% do medics.
But what we found with our active employees is that depending on where you go to the doctor and whatever the plan is less expensive might meet people's needs. And
well, at this point, I think with the retirees, first of all, there are many things that happen to the body that ages. Number one, and number two, because many of these people travel, I think they like to the portability of the medics. So. But
for local,
right, there are options, and so.
And I would also like to commend Casey and those people from the associations who came and participated, although it wasn't a negotiation because that's what we can't do. It was definitely collaborative. Both sides listening. It was Dover-Sherborn at its best. We thank Dawn for backup information, data that helps people make decisions by bringing in our attorney as needed. It was a great process, and it was DS at its best.
And one of the things, just to make sure everyone knows, the changes for the retirees will go into effect on January. So doing this now gives people unpleasant news perhaps, but time to prepare. And so, they'll be making their choices. Is it October, November?
Yes. Early fall is their open enrollment. Yeah. So we're giving them.
So doing this at this point gives them plenty of notice. Some of them, it's very hard to get to everyone. And because this wasn't a real it was kind of a hybrid type of thing, we couldn't really send it out to everyone. And then even once I got involved, I did send something out to a retiree email list, but I don't have and never want to have, and nothing personal to any retiree past or present, such a list and to be responsible in wielding it. So there were gaps, but I know we got to some key people, and then the second letter got out, and we did hear things, and people vented, and some vented for a half hour, but it was okay to take those calls. And in the end, I think people are not happy, but they do understand. So,
okay. And as promised, I want to open it up for public comment. If anybody has any comments, we're good. All right, good. Everybody here. All right, Claire.
So I've provided a motion that our
attorney. I will read that motion.
Just make sure it's attorney wrote the motion. Okay.
I make a motion to approve the retiree health insurance contribution plan as presented so that the percent of health insurance contribution paid by retirees increases 5% per year for 4 consecutive years commencing on January 1, 2020, so that the percent of retiree health insurance contribution for all retirees shall be 50% effective January 1, 2023. The only exceptions to this action shall be the 5 current retirees who have been identified by the district and who are not and never will be Medicare eligible. Finally, I move that we amend Section 6 of our group insurance regulations to reflect these changes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
friends.
it.
Thanks for hanging in there.
No problem,
Yeah.
it's kind of fun, you know, democracy at its tedious
need
best.
We tried.
Thanks. All right. So I've got proposed changes to the 2019-2020 student handbooks first read. I believe that goes to John. Yeah.
You want to start?
Oh, sure. Yep, that's fine. So,
John showing that he reads the minds of the students who then
Yes.
bring up.
Yes, I thought that was so funny. Yes.
Yeah.
absolutely. So we have 3 proposed changes. The first one, we currently allow for our seniors who have senior privilege to come in late. And what we would like to do is propose that actually we extend that to any student who has a first period directed research. We do recognize and understand that sometimes freshmen and sophomores in certain times for families may not be able to take advantage of that, but other times they may. So ultimately our thinking was, let's open this up to all of the grades, because there may be times when they can do it or a neighbor can bring them in because they had a late concert, something took place, a wake, and they have a DR, and they can do that. So the proposal is, in the first instance, to open up the directed research sleep-in option. It fits with Child Success, it fits with our student council town meeting request, and really it fits with sort of the thinking with our start time. That's the first one. I'll just go through the 3, and then if people have questions, I'd certainly come back to it. The second one is a proposed change. It's just really clarifying language with respect to senior project. The previous language had said satisfactory academic achievement. We now would like to say no grade below a 70 and no outstanding incompletes. This came about from Ms. Clancy and Ms. Bishop, who just had conversations with some senior teachers and just said, look, we want to still make sure that our kids are maintaining standards that are representative of what we want our kids who go out on these senior projects. It doesn't mean you have to be getting straight A's by any means, but it does also means that you are still doing some academic work and still taking your studies seriously. So we wanted to simply define that by saying nothing below 70. The other piece has been conversations that have taken place within the faculty, conversations that have taken place within school council, PTO meetings, guidance advisory, and that was also in line with Child Success, and acknowledging that high stakes tests are still a reality and are still have value and are important, yet sometimes the value we place on them may be misproportioned to what they really are in the end. So looking at the totality of that student's full year work and effort as opposed to one single test. So our proposal is to go from 20% of each respective semester grade down to 10, which would make each quarter 45, 45, and then 10. We think it would give greater merit to their efforts in each of the quarters, and it would reflect probably in overall stronger grades, number 1, but number 2, and probably even more importantly, reduce some of the anxiety and the stress as it's related to the mid-year and the finals being so high in some people's eyes.
Okay. Scott, then we'll ask questions after. Do you want to? Then we have questions now. Yeah. Questions now.
I just had a very quick question for John. I have no problem with setting academic standards for senior project. Would you say that all the students who participated this year, for example, including students who may struggle academically, I'm just thinking about the one example you gave of the student who's with Golden Opportunities, would that student still be able to participate under this criteria?
Yes, okay. Yes, they would, absolutely. And for us, it was just, we got all of our kids to that point. At the 11th hour, we said to some of them, look, they started the senior project presentation paperwork in the fall. And for some of them, we started to see a little bit of a slipping, and we came to them and we have reminders to say, you got to maintain your academic work. So yes, they still would have been able to. We just wanted to keep them honest.
Okay, great.
My comment is, good job.
Yeah. Love the sleep-in option.
Really appreciate you taking that, John, and bringing that to your council. I mentioned that in my TV show this morning, and was the one time I've got 3 smiles across the board. So I think that will be well received by the
That made up
kids.
for only one snow day for some
We'll see what the
True.
parents
right?
think.
True. Well, I will say this, I think that John should tell, when he breaks this out to people, tell them, we're going to try this and see how it goes. Because I think people really do need to experience this and kind of let things sort themselves out, whether or not neighbors will take advantage of giving each other rides or whatever that is. But I think at the end of the day, it's one way that we're demonstrating for the families that we get the picture in terms of how.
You have a built-in pilot year, because if we're flipping in a year,
That's correct.
you can say this is good for this year.
Right,
and when
because
we-
next year,
And then when we
schedule's
look to
different anyways.
finalize the flip times, we're gonna revisit that just based on the experience we
Okay,
had this year.
I don't anticipate it being a problem. We used
Can I
it
ask a technical
when I was a
question about it
principal.
though? So for kids like my child who always has to take the bus until he someday gets a car, which will be never, because sorry, TV. Good luck. There'll be a place for him to go when I put him on the bus, right? If he has DR first
Oh, of
period.
course,
Like,
we
he
will still
can
have
come to
DRs.
school.
Absolutely,
Fabulous,
yes.
we're good.
And actually, here's another byproduct that will benefit kids. It will give greater access to the library for first period DRs as well.
Right.
For those of you who
That's
have
Even better.
kids who graduated, you know the importance of getting into the library. We allow 50 per period. This will also enhance that. But on top of that, we still will have some directed research. And we'll also explain to the parents that they could decide first semester, I'm not going to have my child do that. That's absolutely the family's decision. And we will have DRs, appropriately aligned for that. We just thought that it might make sense. One of the questions that came to my attention, it's a really good one, is, okay, what about Medco students? Right now, even with senior privilege, our Medco students can't always take advantage of that. They sometimes can when they come during the day because they can actually sign out. And if they either have friends who have access to transportation or if they're going somewhere local, they can use it. They just don't typically get to use it first thing in the morning if they're coming in from the city.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I'll make it quick. This is actually a good example of what I was talking about last week, which is that we sometimes forget that these kind of scary discussions about things like changing the start times, we tend to hone in as people, I guess, on all the negative ramifications. But this is actually a really good example of something that spun out of the start time discussions, a really positive thing that spun out of that. And I expect there are going to be a lot more things like this.
Yeah.
So thanks for having the courage to step up and address it, John.
Great, thank you. All right, Scott.
Thank you. Our changes there are a number of changes we made that I didn't give you. It had to do with pronouns and changing them to gender neutral pronouns. So the he, she's become they, and so forth. So throughout the handbook, we've done that.
That's great and important to note, I think, that you're doing that. So thank you for doing that.
That was Beth had asked us to look at that, and the school council took that on. So the first change was we wanted to make sure we had a statement in here, although we've never refused a child from participating in anything for financial reasons. We wanted a statement in our opening letter in the handbook so that parents are aware of that, because I know every family reads the handbook from cover to cover before they sign off on it. But no, we wanted that there, just so that they'll feel comfortable reaching out. Not that they shouldn't, but and then as you move forward, there were a couple of clarifications on some language in discrimination policy, and then another sentence down under for English language learners. And then with our discrimination policy, it was the policy for students and employees, and because it's a student handbook, we modified the language so it's just for students, so they wouldn't be confused with the.
Although it still says or employment and its services, programs and activities in the new, under that third line, under new, the new part.
In the third line, right.
Yeah, so is that because?
Because it includes employment.
Right, we
Employment.
do have some
So-
students who
Could
are,
be implied.
that could be employees here, who are summer students.
Okay,
So it didn't make sense to take that out.
okay,
Because the
okay,
student
thanks for clarifying.
could be an employee. We also had listed here, we have later in the document, all of the equity coordinators, but here we listed the middle school coordinator. Moving along, we wanted to put a clarifying statement in there about if they were having trouble with the Aspen portal, how to go about seeking help. And then the nurse asked that we put in the recommendation that the students be vaccinated for HPV. And under discipline, we added a statement at the end about the consequences that are outlined are the maximum of what could happen, but we look at every event as a teachable moment, and how you handle a situation with a 6th grader is far different from an 8th grader, and then again, an 8th grader who may have done the same thing 4 times is different from an 8th grader who did it once, and we wanted parents to know that we take that license to use our professional judgment.
Yeah. That makes sense. And harassment.
And I think the others, again, that was just changing it to students. And then the last part is just about asking parents, clarifying. I think in the past it was students could be told they couldn't come to the next event, which seems to be counterintuitive to what we're all about.
If their parents didn't pick them up.
If their
which is
parents
fine.
didn't pick them up, we don't want to consequence a child for
Thank you.
something
Parents need to be
that they
reminded to
didn't
come
have
pick
any
up their
control
kids.
over. And it does not happen that often. We have, if there is an issue and the parent is delayed, and they're incredibly apologetic.
Yeah, things happen.
Can't be too common.
Anybody have any questions or comments? No? All right, thank you very much, and we'll vote those in June. We can move on to the consent agenda, the minutes for February 26th and March 5th, and the donations. Anybody have any questions, comments, changes?
No, I'll move to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor? Great, thank you. We can look at the communications. I've got just really quick items for the June 11th meeting, which I believe will be, we're going to piggyback a joint with the regional meeting. The joint will be from 6 to 7. Our meeting will start at 7, for those of you who are still coming. And we've got the school improvement plan, I believe, because we usually vote on that in June, yes?
DSCF donations.
Yep, DSCF donations, student handbook. If people think of other things, even if you're no longer on the committee, think of things. Oh, E&D.
You can also come.
No, thank you, I have an
Yes.
appointment that night.
I already took it on my calendar.
So thank you also, by the way, for adjusting the schedule to accommodate the other meetings that were all, regional was that night, but we're moving the hours a little bit, correct? And
Because it was
because we're going to add the joint,
graduation.
because the
other day.
middle school graduation moved from,
Recognition night.
recognition night, moved from Friday to, because the last day was,
Right, yes.
Supposed to be Monday, whatever.
Because the last day of school for
We had to
students
make
is on
it.
Friday, the recognition night is on the Thursday, the 13th.
Okay.
Is it what is it now? What's the date?
June 11?
So the one that I have on my calendar for June 13th, I can delete.
Yes, you're gonna stay at
Yes.
2 meetings on the 11th.
Yes, we
You're getting
used
a
to.
bit-
I'm a
you're
little
getting-
slow.
you're getting 2 for 1.
But that's good. I can, that's good.
Anyway or not?
I mean,
Just we say it publicly.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. But before we end, this is the last meeting for two of our members who are present tonight. And first of all, we have food to celebrate. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
Please eat. And we have a few things to say. So you wanted to...
Would. You know, she's not with us tonight, but I do want to thank Lori for the record. And so I have just a couple brief things to share. It's with respect and admiration that we say goodbye to School Committee Chair Lori Crucell. I've known Lori for many years as a fellow Dover parent, but also have appreciated her mentorship and guidance since we've been working mom colleagues on the school committee together. Over the past 5 years, she's brought a steady hand and a thoughtful deliberation to school committee matters. She's worked closely with Dawn and on capital and facilities subcommittees and has been our liaison to CPAC and the Wellness Committee. In this capacity, Lori has kept her laser focus on our mission to serve the whole child. She certainly supports our programming that breeds excellence and leadership on the classroom, field, and stage, but never forgets our obligation to help every single one of our students be the best they can be. Whether it's examining special education programming, committing to the challenges and challenge success, or thinking creatively about start times and schedules, Lori has put children first. While she is now moving on to other professional and personal obligations, we will continue to rely on her perspective and advice and hope that she might bring her gifts to the district in other ways in the years to come. Thank you. So,
Very nice.
Yes, thank you. All right, and you are also...
We're also saying goodbye to Dana.
Dana.
I feel like this is like a show.
This is
Like a sports
Everybody's
basement.
I know.
It's like the it's like American Idol, except we're saying goodbye to all the people.
I never get
Wait a
those.
second.
So Dana is leaving us also tonight after over a decade of service to the Dover-Sherborn schools. Dana, I believe, began her career in service to our districts in the Dover PTO.
Yeah.
Where she served as president, and a job she was doing when I moved here, and I knew that she was respected by parents, students, and the school administration for her effectiveness in advocating for the policies, the procedures, the experience for children, and fundraising for the Chickering School. I remember very vividly being invited as a parent. Dana was the parent coffee lady for my daughter's third grade class when we moved here, and coming for coffee to your house on Pine Street, and knowing by the time that coffee ended that you were a force in my child's education, and it really made an impact on me. She spent the last 7 years as a member of the Regional School Committee, where she has served as our chair, our vice chair, our secretary. She has chaired the search for 2 superintendents. She's been a member of the search for our next athletic director, and has served as a liaison to the athletic advisory, boosters, and PTO. And probably some other things that I am forgetting. She counts the hiring of Dr. Keogh as perhaps the most important thing in her legacy in this role, and she believes that she's leaving the district headed in a positive direction under his leadership. Dana's insistence on long-range strategic planning has shaped the work of this school committee, the selection of our leaders, and the current strategic plan itself. Her understanding of the complexities of the business and financial health of a regional school district has allowed us to move effectively towards better fiscal management, projections, and planning. Her ability to communicate and negotiate with her fellow members, as well as her ability to diplomatically broker compromise, has helped a spirited body to do its work in an effective and efficient way over the years of her tenure. Leaving us tonight as an empty nester with children on the horizon of their own adulthood, Dana is ready to make this move in her own life strategic plan. We wish her well in her future adventures, but we'll miss her work ethic, influence, and commitment to our students greatly. And we hope that she will stop in from time to time to say hello.
Oh, thank you.
And Dana, because...
Oh, Dana.
I've been waiting for it.
You thought this day would never come?
Do you want to introduce that?
I'll do mine separate.
Okay.
So why don't you continue?
All right, I'm going to speak to Claire Graham, and I feel really bad.
I feel like this is
This
is really hot.
Can you
Baby
stand
shower.
in the
It's
middle?
easy in a chair. Stand in the middle.
I have to say, I feel this is a little inadequate. I was busy preparing for the meeting rather than writing this up. So But you have done it all. And I'm sure I'm not even going to scratch the surface. But I know that you served for 12 years on the Sherborn School Committee and then on the region. You've worked with 5 superintendents, 4 assistant superintendents, and 3 business managers.
That's so funny. I wrote down 5 superintendents.
Wow.
On the same wavelength.
Yeah.
During times of transition, you've provided continuity and historical context. You've been secretary, vice chair, and chair more than once. You've chaired the negotiations committee 3 times?
Just twice.
Just twice?
I think it doesn't
feels
really
like
matter.
more? Yeah.
Participated many times.
Many times. You've led the policy committee through major updates. You've helped rework healthcare at the region. You've served on more MOUs and search committees than I care to count, and have mentored numerous school committee members. And I'm fortunate to have been one of the many who benefited from your extensive knowledge of not just our districts, but of how a school committee should operate. To say your departure marks the end of an era. Your work ethic, knowledge of the district, and the role of the school committee has made you an invaluable asset to the district and to your constituents, and most importantly, to the students. And for that, we are truly grateful. And so please accept this small token of our appreciation for your time, commitment, passion, intelligence, thoughtfulness, and guidance. And remember that I have your number in my phone.
I got a new phone number tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So even though you may not be
honestly.
here in body, you will definitely still be here in spirit.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did think about tonight, before we got here, and I was trying to tally up all the things that I had done, and 5 superintendents was one of them. But I also just want to encourage current school committee members and future school committee members to continue to learn from each other, to ask lots of questions, and to do what you do to support the district. It's both fun and challenging at the same time, but there's good days ahead, I'm sure of it. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thanks to the leadership team. This would not be very much fun if we weren't doing it with you. I think this is a tremendous team, and I think that the students of Dover and Sherborn and Boston are really lucky to have you guys at the helm of this district. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not much of one for speeches, and so, but I did want to just take a minute to thank you both for helping me into this school system. It's a little known secret that I actually applied for 2 positions at Dover-Sherborn through the years when I first came in. When I first came in as a teacher and when I first came in as an administrator. And I really thought I really wanted to be here, but it wasn't until later in life that I started to have that hindsight and really appreciate how much this system matters to me and my family. And you guys deserve a ton of credit for that because you've kept it a classy place. You have kept, you've held all of us accountable. And I think that's hugely important. I totally agree with Maggie's comments about the long-term vision, and I think you both had that long-term vision. You shared that with me when I first came into the system. In fairness, I mean, I felt like I had to go through quite a process. You were paying attention to my answers. But that's a testament to your hard work for no pay. So unfortunately, I think that's becoming more and more rare, where people will step up and do these things for free just because they care about their community. And I think that's sad. And so I really, really do appreciate, especially for my own children who benefited from your service as our kids grew up together. I have to admit, we didn't spend as much time together because I was off running schools and my wife was doing a lot of the school stuff, but I know she remembers you guys from class meetings and all sorts of different things. And I remember running into you on the soccer fields, and it's just been a great run for you both. And so we are breaking out of the Apple box just a tad. This is this is a notch above the apples, or perhaps below. But so you're gonna need to open it. But as a token of our appreciation, you can show people what it is. I hope you'll remember us. So
Oh, I love that. This is what's in your office.
it's what's in my office, and those are the core values that we put into place. There's a little plaque on the back. And so we just want you guys to, hopefully you'll always remember that you guys had already captured these values. We just made sure that we really highlighted them in our strategic plan, and we are absolutely living by them. So you should always take pride in that.
Thank you.
So thank you, and thank you to Laurie as well. I'm sorry that she's not here today. The same absolutely applies to Laurie. She has just been a true friend and colleague to me, and just a great supporter of the schools. I always felt like Laurie would look me in the eyes and tell me I am on board with this. So I'm going to miss you guys, but thank you.
I believe that one of you should make the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, guys.